Welcome back to Music 239, Intro to World Music. What you see here is an Armenian duduk. That's the name of this instrument. And it's kind of cool because it's got a reed that goes in here, and it is a double reed instrument. It's got a little cap that's been carved that goes on the top of the reed to protect it while you're carrying it around. Then you pull that off. You put it into the instrument, you cover the thumb hole in the back, and then you cover 8 holes on the front. And the way the holes are spaced, the only way to cover all 8 holes is if instead of using the top pads of your fingers, you use the middle pads, and then the pinky finger can use the top pad. But it's played in a similar way to a bagpipe chanter. If any of you have ever done that, you have to, in order to reach all the holes, you have to cover those with the center pads of your fingers in order to do it right. And so when you see players doing this, that's what they're doing, and that's why their fingers appear to be stretched way over the holes and over the instruments. Everybody see that, how that works? So this instrument came from Armenia, which is where? Well, you can see it on this map here. You can see a map of Armenia, and it borders Turkey. So it is just to the east of Turkey, down below Soviet Georgia. It's not Soviet Georgia anymore, is it? It's down below the Georgian Republic, up above Iran. So it's sort of in between Eastern Europe and the Middle East is where Armenia lies. Armenian people, many of them immigrated to the U.S., and they all have names that end in 3 letters. Anybody know what that is? I-A-N. I-A-N. So just like the word Armenian, people who come from Armenia originally have names that end in I-A-N, like I had a good friend named Sam Manazian, for example, who was a violinist in the Springfield Symphony. He was Armenian. Anybody that has Gregorian, for example, if you have a name that ends in I-A-N, chances are you originally, your ancestors came from Armenia. And that's where this instrument is from, and it's a beautiful sounding instrument when it's played well. I can't say that I am able to do that. But if you go online and go to YouTube and look for duduk players, you can find some pretty good sounding instruments, a lovely sound to it, and it's a very romantic sound in many cases. So check that out. It borders several of the countries that we've been dealing with here. So you can see so it really gets an amazing sound. Here's a female Armenian player who is quite amazing, and well, I'll let the pictures speak for themselves in her performance. There you have some duduk performances. Another instrument I brought today is actually from Western Russia. It's called a jaleika, J-A-L-E-I-K-A, and it's sorry? Yeah. Let me put both of these up here. The duduk and the jaleika. This is not writing very well. Now, you want to prepare yourself for this sound because it's pretty loud. Yeah. Yeah. It has a metal reed on the inside of it that is vibrating when you blow into it. So so that's why it gets such a loud sound. The jaleka is quite amazing and something that you could definitely use to wake up your neighbors. If they had a wild party the night before and you felt like waking them up early the next morning, this might do it. So there you go.
Does that involve a lot of back pressure?
It doesn't. There's not a serious amount of back pressure at all, unlike some double reed instruments that really back up so that you actually have to exhale before you inhale. This really doesn't, and it's really free blowing and easy to finger, and really, if you have one, it's pretty easy to learn to do it. So there's a couple of Eastern European instruments that you don't see every day. How are they tuned?
Yeah.
Well, the Duduk, if you go and Google Duduk tuning, you will find that there are different Duduks in every key, almost every key. So this happens to be a Duduk in G. So its highest note is going to be G, about here on the piano. And it's going to go down to the D below the G, an octave below that. So it's got a range of about an octave and a fourth. And it's equal temperament, and it's diatonic as well. This instrument is also diatonic. The jaleka is also diatonic, and it only has about maybe 8 notes on it, similar to the hulus. That's about all you get. So it's fairly limited in terms of the numbers of notes that are available, but it's the technique of playing them that really makes them come to life, as we saw from the YouTube videos. So a couple of cool instruments there. Let's get back to our PowerPoint, though, and talk about the Eastern European melodies and harmonies. Okay, this is the next slide on your PowerPoint. And in European music, there are a lot of melodies associated with what is known as solfege. Solfege is a solmization syllable, taking syllables and assigning them to pitches that was actually developed by the early church in order to teach monks and others how to sing the chants. That's why it was developed. So when we sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, everybody sing with me. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and then down. Do, ti, la, so, fa, re, re, do. Right, and those syllables actually come from famous Gregorian chants. Okay, so for example, re came from a chant that started with the syllable re, and everybody knew that one. And then mi started with another chant. Fa started another chant. And so everybody knew these tunes, and they knew that, oh yeah, the song that starts with fa actually starts on the note F, or it starts on the note G, or wherever their system was. They would know that tune well enough to know that pitch and associate it with it. And that's where this whole thing came from. So we use those syllables, and you may have heard it if you saw The Sound of Music, the song "Doe a Deer," a female deer, right? You probably have heard that when you were small. It's the same system, and it applies to a great deal of European music, including the music that we're looking at in this system. So if you turn to page 226 in your textbook, you will find an example of how chords are used to harmonize the Christmas tune "Joy to the World," which it uses as an example of European music. So how many people know the song? Just about everybody knows the song, okay? So let's sing it. Joy, okay, there's your first note. Let's sing, 3, 4. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Okay, that's enough. Now, the harmonies that are underneath that are shown here on page 226, and if you do the piece in the key of C, which is where we are right now, then the chord underneath that first part, all the way through Joy to the world, the Lord, all of that would be a C chord, and then we would switch to a G chord on has, and then back to a C chord on come and let. The next line, we would go down to let earth receive, and when we get to earth, then we switch to an F chord, then back to G, and finally back to C, so that the chords are changing underneath the melody. So now what I want to do is to have those who feel that they can do it sing the chord tones. So you're going to sing joy to the world. Now you're going to go, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Right, and what you sang was C, 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 G, C, C. So you went back and forth between the chord tones, the roots of those chords. Now, let's have those people still stay on the chords and everybody else go back and sing the melody again. And let's put that together so that we can get a sense of what the melody and the harmony together are going to be like. Ready, 2, ready, sing. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. And now you hear melody and harmony happening together, and that is a very European tradition. Melody and harmony, harmonies based on chords, particularly based on triads. Okay, so that's what the author is trying to show you at this point, is that particular sound. There is, however, an exception to that in our CD examples, and that is the ganga songs that happen on your CD from Bosnia. Has anybody listened to this yet?
I've heard about it.
You've heard about it. Okay. Okay. The Bosnian ganga songs are on CD 2, track 9. Track 9. Sister, Hold On to Your Chastity.
Yeah. We listened.
Is what it's called. So you listen to the song? Yeah. And it's a little unusual, isn't it? In your textbook, on page 227, you'll find a picture of the 3 young ladies who sang this for the author in, I think, the year 1990. No, sorry, 1989. They sang this for the author in Bosnia. And this was before the war. The Bosnian and the Serbs and the Croats had a big war that lasted about 10 years. And so before the war, these singers sang this particular ganga song. And the text is translated here on the following page. Sister, hold on to your chastity like tears. The one who kisses you, he will not take you. Sister, hold your chastity like tears. Okay, so clearly the kind of song that young women might hear their mothers singing. Let's hear what it sounds like, and then we'll talk about how it gets the sound that it does. Okay. Pretty unusual, isn't it? Pretty unusual. Why does this music sound the way that it does to our ears? Describe the sound of it. Dissonant. What else? Sounds like seconds. We'll get back to that. What else does it sound like? Do you notice how they all start together on the same pitch, and then one of them moves up so that they will be in intervals called seconds? Now, in music, if you look at lines and spaces in music, the interval of a third is always either on two successive lines or two successive spaces, like that. But if we put music on a line and a space right next to each other, we will get what is known as a second. And our ears, particularly in a European American tradition, are used to hearing thirds. We like thirds. We think that that is a nice sounding interval, so we call it a consonance. And most of the time, in the European American tradition, which a lot of us have grown up in, we tend to hear a second as a dissonance, and that's why somebody used that term. So we hear the third as a consonance, and we hear the second as a dissonance. So consonance and dissonance then in our culture tend to be based on these kinds of sounds. The third being consonant and the second being more of a dissonant sound, and we want to hear the dissonance of a second resolve like that. It creates for us tension and release. The tension of the second interval is released by the motion to the third. Second moving to third. Tension and release. So for example, if I play this chord, this is the dissonance, there's the tension, and it resolves. Tension and release. In the Bosnian culture, however, and in much of Eastern Europe, the second is considered a consonance and not a dissonance. They like that sound, and that's why on the recording you have of Sister Hold On to Your Chastity, you hear them start on a unison and then move up to a second, so that they will deliberately get that sound that to our ears, to our culture, sounds dissonant, but to their ears is very pleasing. So we're going to try it now. We're going to try to all sing the same tone, and then we're going to have everybody on this side of the room go up a step and see if we can produce that dissonance. Yeah. Let's try it. Everybody sing this note on La to sing La. Right. Good. Now everybody on this side of the room sing a step higher. La. Good. Now this side of the room, go back to your F. La. Now add the G. La. And keep it going. Good. Now try it on these pitches. La, la. Good. Now we're going to sing Joy to the World in parallel major seconds, okay? So this side of the room is going to sing Joy to the world, the Lord is come, right? And then you're going to sing Joy to the world, the Lord. Right. So your starting pitch is joy. Your starting word, joy. See if you can maintain it. 2, ready, and Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Okay, that's about enough. Yeah, that's about enough. The fact is that by the time we got to the bottom of that phrase, we weren't exactly a second apart anymore because everybody was listening to each other too much and adjusting. Your ears were saying, whoa, that doesn't sound good, I better adjust. That's really tricky. That's really tricky. On Friday, I want 2 volunteers to come up and try to sing ganga music. Because the fact is that if you read your text about this, when they actually perform ganga music like you hear on track 9 of your CD, they are facing each other very closely. And if there are 3 of them, they stand in a very tight semicircle. And sometimes when recording people have tried to record them, they say, well, you be in one room and you be in the other room. Doesn't work. They have to be standing close and facing each other to make the kinds of overtones happen when you sing parallel seconds with each other. So we're going to get some vocalists in here to volunteer to try to sing ganga music on Friday. Yeah, some possible candidates there. Okay, good. That'll happen on Friday. Now what I want to do, though, is looking back at your PowerPoint about this music, the parallel seconds and the ganga songs, there is an interesting parallel to this. The major second, which is dissonant in many cultures but consonant in this one, compare that to the music of this composer, Bela Bartok, who was Hungarian, and as I told you last time, he went out in the countryside collecting folk songs for many years and recording them back in the 1920s and 30s. And he heard a lot of those parallel seconds, and they show up in the music that he wrote for piano and the music he wrote for orchestra. So he tends to not be afraid to write music using the interval of a second, and his music is permeated with these kinds of things. One of the best examples of this is called From the Diary of a Fly. I love that title. From the Diary of a Fly. And it's from his collection called the Microcosmos, Book 6. Microcosmos meaning little worlds. From the Diary of a Fly. And if you look at the intervallic content here, we've got not only major seconds going on in the top voice, that's the top voice, right? But the lower voice has a minor second away from both of those. And so on, okay? From the Diary of a Fly. It only works because of the second intervals that are going on there. And he's really just not afraid to write those at all. The free variations from Book 6, which is the first piece in this book, also make use of that interval quite a bit, so that you hear that minor second going on all over the place. And so on, okay? So Bartok really liked to hear those minor seconds and major second sounds going on, very clashing kinds of sounds to our ears. But when you consider the culture that he came from, when you listen to ganga songs, for example, or hear that kind of thing happening, you understand a little bit better why his music sounds the way it does. In closing, let me play you some Bulgarian music that makes use of these same minor second, major second intervals. This is by a group called the Bulgarian Radio Orchestra Women's Choir that came out in the 80s. And when it came out, everybody said, wow, this is great. This is what Bulgarian music sounds like. It's called Pilinsa Sings, this particular song. And I want you to listen to it and listen to those particular intervals. But as you do, realize that this music is not being recorded out in the field. This is not a field recording. This is not like the ganga recording that you have on your CD, which is a field recording. This is not. This is recorded in a studio, and the choir has been carefully trained to sing these intervals in a way that the arranger felt represented Bulgarian music. There is a name for this sort of technique, and we've run across it before, and we're going to see it again. It's called managed traditionalism. Remember that term? Managed traditionalism. In this case, a government agency has come along and said, this is what we want people to know about Bulgarian music. Let's make this recording and send it out to the world. That's the way this music sounds. It sounds very controlled in some ways. Listen and judge for yourself. Yeah. Okay. Does this mean that it's not good? No. Does this mean that you can't like it? No. But you need to be aware that it's not particularly authentic. Okay? It is not a field recording. It is something that's been done in a studio. We're going to get back to this song, Pilinsa Sings, from the Bulgarian Radio Orchestra Choir next time. Today's presentation is a guest performance by a Ukrainian musician named Sergei Shapoval. Sergei lives in Kansas City, and he travels all over the Midwest doing performances and presentations like the one you are going to see, which involves Ukrainian and Eastern European traditional music. The performance you're going to see him do is designed for young children, and the event at which it was recorded was a meeting of the International Adoptive Families of Southwest Missouri organization. They have many different countries from which families in Southwest Missouri have adopted young children, including Russia. And so because there are Eastern European children of that heritage in this area, the organization tries to provide cultural experiences for people from that area. So that was why Mr. Shapoval was brought in to do this performance. You're going to see him talk about a number of instruments, and he'll start with the flutes, and you'll see him play a couple of different flutes, sometimes at the same time. Then a trombita, which is a large trumpet-like instrument, which is similar to the Swiss Alp horn and used for similar purposes. He tells a great story about trying to get that on the airplane that you'll want to pay attention to. Then you'll hear him speak of the Buhay, which is Ukrainian for bull, and you'll learn what that means when you get to it. Also the lira, which is also known in Eastern Europe and Western Europe as the Hurdy. It involves a crank, and you'll see how that works when he performs it. And then you'll see a performance that he'll do on the accordion. Sergei lives in Kansas City, as I said before, and what he does is to send the money he makes as a performing musician back to his family who still lives in the Ukraine. And it's a very interesting kind of situation because he's using his ability to perform and the ability of America to support his art, to support a family that actually lives back in the Ukraine. What I'd like to do is to have you compare his story with the one of Minsur Hatic that's in your textbook. Minsur Hatic, originally from Bosnia, now lives in St. Louis and did an accordion performance that's in your text. He left because of war. Mr. Shapoval left the Ukraine because of monetary reasons, but for one reason or another, they both find themselves in America doing performances and making money where there is money available. So a very interesting parallel. In both cases, then, they have left their original culture to come to America. And you can see other examples in traditional music where the original culture cannot support the traditional music anymore, and so America has become a sort of a haven for people who perform in this style. A great example of that is African music. Much of the African music that we have heard in this class, some of the performances that you saw, cannot actually be found in Africa anymore. The only place to find some kinds of African music is in American universities, where it is studied and preserved, whereas in its original culture they can't afford to do that anymore because they're too busy trying to make a living in a third world culture. So that's one example. Another really good example of this is China, where I was recently contacted by a group of Chinese musicians who want to continue to come here and do performances because in their own country technology is the big craze, and all the young people in China are interested in is getting an iPod and getting into the new technologies, and they are turning their back in many ways on their traditional music. So the traditional musicians of China, at least in this particular group that came from Hunan province, want to come here and perform because they don't have the audience and therefore can't make a living at it back in their original culture. So in all of these instances we see transplanted musicians, musicians that cannot or don't want to make a living in their original culture and thus come here to America. And I think that it's certainly something that Americans can be proud of, the fact that we are able to maintain and preserve these cultures from other countries because of the relative wealth of this nation. I think it's something that we should be very pleased that we are able to do and to try to open more doors to provide those opportunities. So please enjoy this presentation of Ukrainian traditional music by Sergei Shapoval.
The first handmade musical instrument made in Africa. People call them drums. The second handmade musical instrument, it's a flute. Do you know what the first flute that was made from bamboo or wood? It was made from bone of animals, right after the supper. Well, it was different way a long time ago. Now we can make anything. They can be very tiny or they can be very, very long and very big. So I'm going to start with a small one. So let's hear the first Duduk. Here we go. Are so clever. If they didn't have somebody else to play the flute, you have only one person, and you do just glue two flutes together. So here we go. Are so impressive, but I cannot show you that if your eyes are open. I tell you, it's too impressive. Your eyes can pop out. So I'd like if all of you will close your eyes and don't open until when I will tell you. And no peeking. All right, close your eyes and don't open until when I will tell you. Okay, open your eyes. Now this musical instrument we call trombita. Trombita usually used in the western part of the Ukraine and also in Moldova and some other countries. This musical instrument is not just like a musical instrument. It's actually saved lots of lives of the people because it was like a cell phone today. If you need to pass the message for very far, you pick up a phone and you call. Well, how are you going to do that 100 or 200 years ago? You just blow the whistle. But you have to have a big whistle to really pass the signal someplace. So this was a special flute or trombita to send the signals very far. Or maybe it's a wedding or somebody died or somebody having an attack and it's coming and you need to help or help from another town. This was a right to do it. So let's call it a 100-year-old cell phone. So let's see what it sounds like. Now, would you raise your hand like this? And I'll put it under your hand. No, you sit down and just raise your hand. Perfect. And hold it right there. Perfect. All right. I'm going to blow that musical instrument. Somebody will have a bad hair day. Another side. Well, the girl can help me right here. Hold on. See, when I came to the United States and I brought this musical instrument, I passed the security. It was so long, they said, sir, you cannot take that on the airplane. And I said, what do you do? So they gave me a saw. I said, just cut it in half. Well, I said, it's just like to cut the accordion in half. I mean, it's pointless, but they said, well, that's what you should do. So I cut it in half, and they give me 2 sticks and say, welcome to America. And I brought home in Kansas City and I kind of assembled together so it doesn't do the sound like it does before. It did before, but anyway, give you some idea. Are you ready? Today, when the people in Ukraine have festivals, they open festivals with a trombita. So when the 2 or 3 guys are playing the trombita, it means their holiday is officially started. Well, this is kind of flute. It's not really something what you didn't know, but I'd like to show you something because you never knew before. So, is anybody can tell me what is it? What is it? Yeah. Did you ever see the drum with a horse tail in the middle of it? And I show the people, they say, what do? You just pull the tail, and I say, yup, you pull the tail. Now people usually astonish. I mean, how do you play? I'd like to show you. So, pay attention. Now you have to sit in a chair. You have to put that musical instrument between your legs and squeeze it so it doesn't go anywhere. Now you have to have a cup of water. Margie, thank you. But I need water not because I'm thirsty. No. Because when I play, my hands and the tail has to be wet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dip my hands in this cup of water 3 times. 1, 2, 4. Still makes 3. And then you have to make the tail wet. 1, 2, 3. And then you just pull the tail. Just imagine a couple of 100 years ago, people gathered for the wedding, and they have flutes and violins, but the noise are so thin, they need to have something really like a bass, but they didn't have it. And they was looking through the town and see what can make that noise, what can give like a bass, so they found the bull. You know, when the bull is making noise, go like, I say, wow, what a great bass. But you cannot take the bull to the wedding, because if you pull the tail of the bull, you will mess up the whole wedding. So what they find out, they use that concept of the tail is the drum, so it can amplify that sound. And they call that musical instrument Buhay, which is in English means bull. So here we go. Let's see what it sounds like. We are ready. Fascinating musical instrument, a fascinating human creation. Let's go learn about another musical instrument which is 1,200 years old. That's what they invented. This musical instrument is quite different, but in some ways looks very familiar. It looks like big violin, isn't it? But you don't have to have a bow, and you don't have to go to school even learn how to play. It's easy. It's like in America, people call piece of cake. That was designed for people who just like music. And you just play any way you want, anytime you want. You just have to kind of get used to that musical instrument. So let's tell you how it works. Now, there's only one string. And there's one handle. And what you do, you turn that handle in a circle. When you turn the handle and the metal rod, they attach to that wooden wheel. The wheel starts to spin, and the little string just slightly touching to the wheel. So when the wheel is spinning, the string go like, it means making noise. So I'm going to show you what it sounds like. Watch. Be the most boring song on the planet Earth. So something should be done to make music. So, people clever. They find out if they can put the box on top of it, and if you can open the box, watch. There's the string goes through the whole box. There's the metal and wooden pieces, what connected to the buttons. Kind of like accordion buttons now. When you push these buttons, you see what's happened? The metal and wooden pieces, they touch the string in different places. Isn't it clever? It's just like you're playing with your fingers. So, you move the fingers and you turn that handle. That's it. You just have to push the right button in the right time. That's the tricky part. But that can be learned. And I'd like to show you what it sounds like. Now, the official the name of the musical instrument is lira, but people give their own name. It calls Hurdy, Hurdy. Can you say it? That's it. That's a better name. Hurdy, Hurdy. I'm going to play, and you can hear what it sounds like. But you know what? Excuse me. I need your help. And here's what you should do. When I will play, no matter what I do or say, you have to repeat after me. Okay? All right. Works. And I tell you a little bit story about this musical instrument. You know, the musical instrument, what you see in my hands, is not very old. This musical instrument was invented 180 years ago in country Germany. And they called it Accordion. Lots of people like that because it's very portable. It's small, it's light. You can do several things with it. You can play chords and melody and bass and little bells and whistles, everything they can install there. So it was like a one-man band. Each country have their own variations of the accordions. Some of them have buttons and some of them have keys. But the button accordion is the first accordion that was invented. The keyboard accordion was invented a little bit later. So the most popular models is the buttons accordions in the world. Now, we have this musical instrument in Ukraine too. This small version of the accordions we call harmoshka. And I'm going to play for you so you can hear that delicious song.